Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the RotoViz Best Ball Show. My name is Colm Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter at Overtime Ireland. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host here on the show. It is Zachary Krueger, who you can follow on Twitter at ZK_FFB. We have another Zach, or a Zachary, I guess we could say here, of a different format. It is JJ Zachariason, who you can follow on Twitter at LateRoundQB. I'm sure you're already doing so, but if you aren't, please rectify that immediately. You can check out all his work as well at lateround.com, and of course the fantastic Lit Round Fantasy podcast that he does himself, but then of course the Live in the Stream podcast with Denny Carter. So lots of amazing content coming out, as well as the draft guide, which we'll touch on in a moment. But JJ, welcome to the live stream.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. I don't know if I'd consider Living the Stream a fantasy football podcast at this point in its lifespan, but yeah, you can listen to that for sure if you want some bathroom etiquette takes and whatnot.
Yeah, myself and Sean Siegel have been trying to work some of those shows into the RotoViz overtime kind of rotation. I don't know. Hopefully people are still coming for the fantasy football takes as well, but yeah, fun stuff there. I did mention the draft guide. We'll give it a quick plug off the top. You're probably better to give your thoughts into it than I am at this point.
Yeah, I put together a draft guide that I didn't really want to make it like super player profile focused and stuff, which is great if people like that stuff, or if there are content creators that are doing things that way. I really wanted to focus on the strategy side and the game theory side of fantasy football, and really sort of cater all of that work to the 2022 season. And so in that guide, you can get my take on variance and positional value, and ways to find breakouts at running back and wide receiver and tight end and all that kind of stuff, as opposed to just draft this guy. There is some of that draft this guy stuff towards the end, but the bulk of it is very much strategy driven, because I think it's just important to have that foundation. I know that RotoViz obviously is very into that as well.
Yeah, very much so. And Zach, you're the man for the quote. What is the quote? The teaching to fish quote? Do you want to give it a recap again?
Yeah, you can give a man a fish and you can feed him for a day, or you can teach a man to fish and you can feed him for a lifetime. So it sounds like JJ is teaching people how to fish.
That's right.
Yeah. Learn how to fish and don't be a fish. I think that's the best way as well to look into it.
Very applicable for fantasy.
Yeah, I think you can get the player takes, and that's obviously very important, like you mentioned. But having the structure, having the elements of the draft, and how to organize your fantasy football team from that perspective, I think is much more valuable. So definitely check out that, and of course you can check out everything coming from JJ over at lateround.com. We are going to draft in the Underdog Puppy tree in just a couple of moments. That's going to be fun. Myself, Zach, and obviously JJ. We have to probably touch on the East Coast dads thing. I was talking to you via DM when we were organizing this. You mentioned it was your daughter's birthday over the past weekend. It's interesting. I've mentioned this to a number of my friends who have kids around the same age as my daughter, but she turned 4 in April. And when you had your child, and it felt like there was a big gap, I was like, oh, my daughter's like 2 months old now. There's such a gap. But then when it gets to they're both the same age like that, it's so close. And I guess we have to give a shout out to her for her birthday over the past weekend.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I have my Funkos behind me. For my birthday back in February, she got me an Elsa and Anna Funko back there, and I think I got a Tinkerbell one for Father's Day. So she's been adding to the backdrop here a little bit. But yeah, I mean it's wild where when these kids are born, you think so much about like the age gap between like a 2-year-old to a newborn is like massive, because they're completely different human beings. But then when they're 30 and 28, they're literally the exact same. I mean, it's just that as you age, that age gap matters a lot less. But obviously, when it comes to fantasy football in the NFL, age does indeed matter when you are, in your 20s and in your early 30s.
Yeah, it certainly does. If those guys are in their early 30s, maybe you don't want to have them all on your fantasy football rosters. But yeah, the age difference between like a 30-year-old now, where we're at that kind of age, and a 60-year-old doesn't seem that much compared to what you mentioned. So fun times. But that's the end of our age analytics discussion here in terms of real life. We will talk about it throughout the draft in terms of the players themselves. But Zach, we are ready to go here. I think we should get ready to jump in. I'm excited for it. Have you been drafting much in these tournaments, the larger field tournaments, JJ?
Sorry, what was that?
have you been drafting much in the larger field tournaments?
I've been trying to. I've since basically the draft ended, the NFL draft ended. I've been trying to grind as many as possible. So I have a decent feel for ADP and sort of the guys that are moving and such like that, and team builds that I generally go with. I've been getting into it.
And I guess then that takes us to, I know we'll probably talk about it throughout, but lit round quarterback in 2022, particularly in these best ball drafts, we usually try and get 2 quarterbacks in the window. So usually one of the elite ones and then kind of a secondary upper tier quarterback. Is that something that you're looking to do in these drafts, or are you looking to wait it out and see what we can do? I like to let the guest influence us a little bit in these drafts. So we're kind of going to go with what you're looking to do.
Yeah, no, I've certainly done that. I get a lot of those like 5th, 6th round guys to get my anchor at quarterback. And then, I will get, maybe like a Cousins type, or even, a little bit later, like I don't mind getting Trevor Lawrence as my QB2 or something like that and stacking some Jags. No pun intended.
Yeah, I was going to say stacking some Jags. I can go a couple ways.
Just getting Marvin Jones and Laviska Shenault in there.
You're good.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the thing with the quarterback position that's pretty glaring with some of the research that I did for the guide and such is that, the market has just gotten a lot sharper when it comes to quarterbacks. It's not really that these elite quarterbacks are giving you that much more significant of an edge that they've given you historically, like over the last 10 years or so. It's really that people are finally realizing the value of mobility at the quarterback position, and they're finally valuing that properly. So it's a little bit more difficult to get quarterbacks later. I mean, the one statistic that I always throw out there is how top 18 quarterbacks by ADP since 2011, if you look at the correlation between ADP versus points per game, that correlation was like non-existent in like 2015 and 2018. Now that correlation is like 55%. I mean, it's actually pretty strong among those players. So we're seeing a lot more predictability at the position, which drives up those costs.
Yeah, and we're talking a lot about drafters getting smarter. There's more information out there. There's the information, for example, that you have in that guide, and that means that people are, like we joked about, learning to fish and rather than just being told which players to draft, and that leads to better ADPs and so on. So we're seeing a smarter community as a whole. We do get the 108 here, Zach. What way are you looking, hoping that we start out this particular draft? I mentioned this last week. My draft slots were going really well, 105 and up this last week. They've been all basically 108 or back, so that has changed dramatically. What are you looking at here, Zach, when we're sitting on the board?
Yeah, I'm definitely convinced that some of these sites just have you cycled through. So it's been a late week for me as well. Stephon Diggs is kind of always my immediate go-to if he happens to make it to us here, which he does. I'd be curious to know before we make a pick where JJ is leading with this first start.
Yeah, I'm fine with Diggs. I'd probably go either Diggs or Dalvin Cook here. I think Dalvin has that like RB1 upside this season. I'm mostly fading Derrick Henry. At least at this kind of cost. I mean, he falls at times where I'll get him. But Saquon going 107 was pretty rich. I'm fine with either Diggs or Cook here.
I'm going to go with Cook just because we don't start teams this way. We always on RotoViz start wide receiver. So let's start running back and go with Dalvin Cook and see what happens.
Yeah, he also opens up, I like Minnesota stacks a good bit. And so he opens that up, with that choice. The one thing I will say is that round 2 is pretty ripe with running backs. If I want to go, and I usually go like with anchor RB with a lot of my builds. And so in a situation like this, you're sort of hoping that a guy like CeeDee Lamb falls somehow into that mid-second. Otherwise, you're looking at potentially an RB start. Mm-hmm. And then you got to hope then in the third that a player that you might, whatever wide receiver, without hitting that like tier break where, from an ADP perspective, that tier break is like where Jalen Waddle goes or whatever. Like you got to hope that like a DJ Moore is there or something like that. You can feel good about that wide receiver 1 spot.
Yeah, there's a needle to tread there in terms of how it plays out. You mentioned CeeDee Lamb. He does go 2 picks later. So we have Stephon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Adams going back-to-back. We are to the 112 pick. So we'll see when it comes back to us in 5 picks time. But as you mentioned, it can sometimes get to that situation where you do get nipped out and it does become an RB start. But we will see. We like to do different things at different times and see how those drafts play out. We'll see how that plays back. The player that would also potentially be there could be Deebo Samuel, for example, but that needle then has to get treaded again in that 3rd round, and maybe somebody like Kyle Pitts might last back to that point. But Zach, we are 2 picks away. Let's see who's available here. I know we don't want to show off our queue in these at times, but let's see who's available.
Yeah, everyone just snipes us, but I went ahead and threw Deebo Samuel in there. I think he's, kind of fallen a little bit. Of course, he's gone. Thank you to a lovely viewer, I'm sure. JJ, where are you leaning at here now if Theo Samuel's off the board?
I'm cool with going RB here, which I know is not the RotoViz way. It's not really my way in most of these drafts either. But I do think that if we do that, then we can feel good about just like pounding wide receiver, maybe even tight end later, in the fourth or something like that. So I would go Mixon personally, but I'm cool with Aaron Jones too in this tier.
Let's do Mixon. This is getting crazy now. Hopefully we don't automatically get shut off by the people behind the scenes at RotoViz with the RB start. I'd like to think that they're going to be gracious enough to know that this is just something we're doing with the guest who wants to go RB.
This is an experiment.
Like it's just an experiment. It's just we're having fun here, guys.
Yeah, I mean, really, I honestly do go anchor RB, hero RB, whatever. In most cases. But a lot of my research also shows that the first 2 rounds are definitely ripe for running back ceiling. And then once you hit that third, I mean, we can see it in ADP too. I feel like at the running back position this year, it's just like once you get past that like 4 net area, you start to hit that wall, and it's like you don't feel comfortable with some of the running backs that are on the board there. Whereas some of the wide receivers are still fairly strong, and I think with a build like this too, if you can get a good wide receiver 1 in the third. Once you get to the 4th, you can start thinking like Darren Waller or something if he's there, and you can feel okay about getting that anchor at tight end then too.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Me and Sean actually drafted yesterday, and this draft will come out on Thursday for people watching this live. We did go with a hyper fragile build where we took 3 running backs in those first 4 rounds and then held off, and we just drafted the 5 running backs in the draft. So we aren't opposed to doing something like that. The one part that I think can become challenging, particularly in the underdog drafts, is we've seen after you go Dalvin Cook, then it's Stephon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Adams, Deebo Samuel, all gone before it gets back to our next pick. Sometimes that wide receiver avalanche can catch you out. And when you then get into the 3rd round, running back again may be the preferred option by, I guess we'll say, value. That can lead into a situation then when the wide receivers continue to dry up. So you're going to have to pivot at some point, and it can leave you a little bit weak there. But we are early in this. I probably would have went Aaron Jones over Mixon, but the Mixon play is something that I haven't done much this year. And the thing that can be very interesting about that is me and Zach and a lot of, I guess, people drafting in a RotoViz style are targeting the likes of Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, for example. And that then is leading to all your exposure is on that side. But then if we do get to some of these big playoff weeks and all of a sudden Joe Mixon rushes in 3 touchdowns from 7 yards out, the exposure, then you can really get an edge on the entire field by having somebody like a Mixon in that lineup. The other part that would have been interesting with Aaron Jones is I don't have week 17 in front of me, and I haven't drafted much Dalvin Cook, but I believe the Packers and Vikings are week 17. Yeah. So that could have been an interesting play. You don't usually want to stack running backs against each other, but the thing that can happen with those 2 guys is they do have that pass catching profile, which could have been interesting. But we are 3 full picks, and then our pick will be up. Since we picked last, Mike Evans, Aaron Jones, Tyreek Hill, Mark Andrews, T. Higgins, Nick Chubb, Alvin Kamara, AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin. Then we have Javonte Williams, Leonard Fournette, Keenan Allen. So there will be options here for us at wide receiver. Michael Pittman going off the board. Let's show us the way here, Zach. You mentioned potentially going for Waller in the 4th round. Pitts may be an option here for us in the 3rd round. Would he be somebody who interested you, or do you want to go with a Mike Evans, DJ Moore kind of guy here and then see if we get one of those tight ends, back in the 4th?
Yeah, I generally will go with either like a Mike Williams or DJ Moore here. It's up to you guys with what direction you want to go there. I've been getting Pitts in the 4th in plenty of drafts, and so I generally get my exposure that way. That's what it's come down to, because he will fall in some drafts.
Colm, make the call. More
DJ
Williams.
Moore.
I figured. I know that's how this goes at this point in time.
And I've drafted a lot of Mike Williams as well. So
same.
DJ Moore is somebody who just, when I've been drafting, I've been willing to take Mike Williams sometimes at the early part of the 3rd round, but just here, I think. The other thing I think with the tight end part, when we were discussing it there, having those 2 running backs to start things off, I am willing to usually pass on the tight end in the 3rd round to make sure we get a solid wide receiver there. So part of the play. If we get Pitts to come back here, I think that would be a dream scenario. Outside of that, maybe we're bouncing back to another wide receiver. We have started with the 2 running backs, DJ Moore. There is some interesting running back options here if we did want to go all out with a hyper fragile build, but we'll see how it plays out. Zach, how are you feeling through the opening 3 rounds here?
So far so good. I actually really like the way it's shaping up. I actually hadn't thought much about the Pitts call of him falling in the 4th round. Not that it's a steep fall, but I mean 9-10 picks for a guy like Kyle Pitts seems like steep enough where you're definitely taking him in the 4th round when you get him. So at least from a personal standpoint, I'll be keeping my eyes on that going forward in drafts. But I like some of the wide receivers we have coming available to us. There are a few guys who I've been drafting who I'm now kind of hesitant to pull the trigger on given their current situation. Deante Johnson being one that I'm very high on who I mean, there's not a lot going on with him right now with his contract situation. So,
and there's no quarterback.
Yeah, and he has no quarterback, which is usually not good. But then also, some of these Denver wide receivers are getting a little bit more propped up after the Tim Patrick news yesterday. So there's a few different options here that I think we can go with. I'll get ready to show Q in just a second here. I've only got 3 guys in there, so I hope we have someone who we like. We can certainly get a few more also.
So Mike Williams did go in the following pick, then Travis Etienne, Cortland Sutton, Josh Allen's the first quarterback off the board, Marquise Brown, Jalen Waddle. It is going to be interesting to see how the Denver ADPs settle for the wide receivers over the coming days after the Tim Patrick news. But yeah, I'm seeing, especially in live drafts, even slow drafts that I'm in some slow FFPC drafts. In those particular drafts, there is some wild overreactions to some of the training camp news. Disappointing. Kyle Pitts goes off the board 1 pick. I think that would have been a super pick there. Anyone you feel strongly about here? We have 20 seconds as we move forward.
I don't feel strongly about it. Do you guys feel strongly about anything here?
I would probably just go Judy. I've gotten a lot of him.
That's fine.
I think I would go Waller to get the tight end based on that as a flat enough area at wide receiver here.
All right, let's do Waller.
Let's do Waller.
I never take players who Colm likes, and then I hear about it for the rest of the week. So you're gonna throw your pitch for Waller. We'll get out of the way now.
Yeah,
at least next week before I see you at the Fantasy Football Expo. I know I don't have to hear about anything. So
I realize that. So Zach, for weeks didn't care if he just ignored me in all these drafts, but now that I'm actually going to meet up with him in Washington next week, he is starting to get a little bit.
Yeah, I hate to be attacked.
Smart.
So we do start off. We have DJ Moore, we have Darren Waller, we have Joe Mixon, and we have Dalvin Cook. So it's an interesting start to pick things up. I just feel that when we missed it, I would have loved it. Pitts there would have been an absolutely phenomenal pick. So disappointing for that to happen. But it was an area there, wide receiver, who when Waddle goes, and I do like both the Denver Broncos wide receivers, but I think sometimes it can be reaction to the news to try and just get them on the roster. And obviously we're going to draft KJ Hamler later in the draft as well to make things right with the world. But Gabe Davis goes off the board. I've noticed as well, I've seen this on the FFPC. I've seen it here for the first time in this draft. Gabriel's gone. It is officially Gabe season. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I picked him in the pros versus Joe's draft recently. I went the Gabe Davis route, but yeah, I guess is he now officially Gabe Davis and not Gabriel Davis? Is that happening?
Well, it's changed on the fantasy site, so I'm guessing that's the official confirmation. But it is now Gabe for anyone that's listening along. Like this year is the name change season. We had Ken Walker. We have actually it was last year Robbie Anderson. I think with the change away, but the Saints wide receiver has completely changed his name. I can't think of Hardy.
Yeah, Deante Hardy, and he was Harris before, right?
Yeah, so it just changed everything up. But we have had a little bit of a quarterback run here in the 4th round. We have Justin Herbert, we have Deante Johnson, Jerry Jeudy, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, George Kittle. Anything that you're looking to do in these rounds now that we have the 2 running backs? I'm really looking to try and get 2 quarterbacks probably before round 10, maybe as far as round 12. And then I think a lot of our other picks here are probably going to be at wide receiver, depending on how things fall. But my fear is here wide receiver could be flat for a couple of rounds, and we may need to pivot in different directions.
Yeah, I would agree. My only thing right now is that we just need to formulate some sort of stack somehow. We'll see what quarterback is there. Kyler might be. I was interested maybe in going the Godwin route in the 5th, just to pair him with DJ Moore for that correlation at the end of the season. But I'm okay with going wide receiver or quarterback around this time. But I do, there's also the chance that we could even get like a Hurts or something like that in the 6th and be able to have. I just am, again, worried a little bit about what kind of correlation we would get and what kind of stack we could get.
Yeah, I've been drafting quite a bit of Darnell Mooney. I don't know. I like them to try and pair him with Justin Fields, but he is somebody who goes in this range. Is he somebody who interests you?
I'd be fine with Mooney. That's not a problem with me. And then we could force it with Fields a little bit later.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Yeah, Fields is probably I think he's my highest rostered quarterback so far.
Yeah, I'm starting to get to the point where there's certain players where you do get to at this point when you're like 50 drafts in, or you're like, maybe it's time to slow down here. But I've done quite a few of the FFPC Superflex tournament drafts, and I seem to be just getting them. Even I passed on him in the third round in a recent draft, and he looped back around to me in the fourth, and I was like, well, I just have to take him again. So these things are the way things are playing out. So we do go Mooney. I've been stacking up quite a bit based on the fact that I've been getting Fields and Mooney. I've been pairing that then with Hawkinson or with the Lions playmakers as well in that week 17. Not the sexiest week 17 game, but I have a lot of exposure to it at the moment. It is going to be interesting to see how this plays out. It is early. Are you looking in terms of stacks to stack purely quarterbacks with playmakers, or are you also trying to get those, playoff correlations as well in JJ?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking for the playoff correlations as well. So, I mean, even, we have Waller. We can go the San Francisco route. We could look at like a Trey Lance even as QB1 with this, and we can get Fields as QB2. I think that could even work. So, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely looking. That was part of the reason why I was semi-interested in Godwin going there with a little bit more optimism around his knee. But yeah, I first and foremost, I'm looking for single team stacks, of course. But if I can finagle and get those week 17 correlations, I try to.
Yeah, it's that kind of balance. I keep talking about getting them at the correct price and when the opportunity arises, rather than forcing those in. Looking here as we are back on the clock, we'll let you talk. Adam Thielen is not one of my favorite guys, neither is Michael Thomas. So make of that information as you wish. How do you want to play it here at this particular pick, JJ?
I mean, of these wide receivers, I've gotten Elijah Moore most of these guys, so I'm cool with going that direction if you guys want to.
Yeah, we can do that. So let's just go with that. I don't love how thin we are at receiver, and the one thing I was kind of eyeing up just as we get a little bit deeper into this thing, I think we're kind of set up to do a couple of actual late round QB stacks, maybe for the brand perhaps, for that, because guys like Derek Carr and even Kirk Cousins would work well with our lineup here, and we can get them a little bit later on. So Lance I like, but I was kind of comfortable fading him here just to go ahead and get the wide receiver, and I really do like Elijah Moore as well. I've got a lot of him, so I thought that was a pretty easy call.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we didn't draft Adam Thielen or Michael Thomas. After that, I was fine with those.
No, yeah, I haven't gotten a ton of that. I mean, I'm buying a little bit more into Michael Thomas, just given what we've seen, over the last week or so. I will say with Thielen, I think Thielen's one of those guys where, like, on paper it looks fine, and you can walk away from projections and be like, oh man, Adam Thielen's a big value right now. But there's a lot of like ADP historical trends that I've looked at that say Adam Thielen's not the best bet in the world. I mean, he has, middle round wide receivers generally are poor bets when they have early round teammates. And so obviously Justin Jefferson going there, which makes sense because the early round alphas are gobbling up high target shares. So there's less room for real ceiling and growth. And then obviously the age thing. We just generally see more of these second year wide receivers in the middle rounds hit, which is why, I've been going Elijah Moore so much. Than we do see, these Adam Thielen types. So, I understand why people are like in on Thielen the way they are. I mean, the offense is definitely more attractive this year on paper. And he was productive when healthy. It's just that he's getting up there in age, and there's just a lot that can go wrong with Thielen this year.
Yeah, no, I agree. We've talked about Thielen a good few times, but the age is a big concern, the injury history, and obviously players who score touchdowns, we can say that he may score those touchdowns again. He doesn't have to be the most athletic player in the world to actually get that red zone work, but if he doesn't hit those double-digit touchdowns, he is never going to return value on that ADP. And we are in this particular round is sometimes where I pivot into the early quarterback, and that is, we have Adam Thielen, Michael Thomas, and Amari Cooper. There's a lot of kind of veterans that I'm bypassing in this range. Then we have Josh Jacobs as a running back. There's a number of concerns that I have across this particular round 6, round 7 region. So to get Elijah Moore, they're very happy. The other person that I would have been happy to take would have been Deante Smith, and he is still there. So we'll see if he gets back. We don't want to jinx things too much, but it feels like Zach said there, we may be going with the late round approach here for just for brand
fun for the brand.
Yeah, always good. JJ, as far as Adam Thielen goes, one guy who I've been interested in getting a little bit more of in drafts, just kind of factoring in some of what you said about Thielen, is KJ Osborne. Do you like him as kind of a pivot off of Thielen just in general, but then even for this kind of build that we're shaping up with here?
Yeah, I love him. There's that group of players that you're just kind of throwing darts at in that tier. It's like Josh Palmer and Van Jefferson before he was just guys who, don't necessarily get you like super excited from like a profile standpoint, but that their teams could throw a lot of 11 personnel out there and they could be on the field and run a lot of routes. And the thing with Osborne in particular is not only did he have like underrated production just in general from an age standpoint, but also, the competition for him, I would argue, at the 2 spot at wide receiver for Minnesota is a lot easier to overcome because of injury, etc., than what we're going to see from like a Van with Allen Robinson or like a Josh Palmer with a Mike Williams. And he's also just stackable too. Like I said, I like going the Minnesota route with stacks.
Yeah.
So we are back on the clock. Couple of players going off the board just before we went. So Zach loves when I talk when we are counting down the seconds. How are you feeling, JJ, here at this particular pick? Anyone really standing out for you at this point? Treylon Burks might be my favorite option, or TJ Hawkinson to go with the double tight end approach.
If you want to go Burks, that's fine. I don't have like a super strong lean with these guys. There's a lot of good research that I did on rookie wide receivers, and I'm sure you guys have come to similar conclusions, but middle round, top 100 rookie wide receivers in particular from an ADP standpoint. So obviously Drake London is going to be locked in there. We'll see like in home, because a lot of the ADP data I use is more like home league, just like regular league, not necessarily because this is sharper ADP, but top 100 rookies historically have been amazing bets, just unbelievable bets at exceeding ADP expectation. And the great part about rookies is that they generally perform a lot better during the second half of the season, which is the part of the season where we need them to perform. So guy like Burks, I've been getting just a ton of rookie wide receivers in general. And then what we see too is that wide receivers that are ranked 100 to 150 in overall ADP when they're rookies, they generally see the most drastic difference between front half numbers to back half numbers. And so, which makes sense because, they're usually like second or third round picks in the actual NFL draft, and they probably take a little bit more time to really get acclimated to their offense, and they're not starting right away necessarily. And so a lot of those wide receivers, those rookie wide receivers, I've been gobbling up to. I was pretty bullish on this rookie wide receiver class in general. I thought it was a good class overall. And so I think that we're going to see them make an impact in year one in redraft leagues.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see them increasing. I've talked about this. I think the shine wore off after the NFL draft on some of the rookies, and the news cycle. We are so enthralled with the news cycle. We can see it this week where one thing happens, it's all like, this is amazing or this is terrible. And when there's that gap after the NFL draft where people aren't really talking that much, I think the excitement maybe wore off some of these rookies. And Treylon Burks obviously had the news around his kind of conditioning. I think we'll see him start to ascend a little bit in ADP. The one player that I was really hoping got back to us here was Brandon Ayuk, so that was disappointing that he's gone off the board. We will have a variety of different options here, and how are you feeling at this particular point, JJ, as to where we might pivot to? We are 2 picks away, so we should have some of our options here.
Yeah, I'm still okay with going with another wide receiver here if we feel good about what's on the board. The only downside with what is being built here is that we just we're banking on these later rounds to be able to really bring it together with the correlations and stuff. But I do think that we're at least drafting good players, so that's obviously a plus.
Yeah, so I would be leaning here to Sky Moore or Hawkinson. We have our kind of elite tight end, so I think we can pin it on him. Are we going Sky Moore?
Yeah, I would go Sky Moore. We can't go Hawkinson. That's same bye week as Waller.
Oh yeah, we've run into that problem before.
Yeah, so I personally like Sky Moore. I really kind of like the whole cast of characters we have here at wide receiver. It's maybe not the most star-studded group in terms of who we're used to seeing, and I think some of the drafts that Colm and I do with the just hammering wide receiver for the first 5 picks, but from like a talent perspective and kind of some of these bets that we're making on several of these younger guys ascending, like these are like everyone who I'm drafting, even with some of my later picks in these drafts. So I actually really like how it's rounding out given our RB start, which I like our top 2 running backs as well.
Yeah, so obviously there's some concern as well yesterday with Sky Moore and the clip circulating. Hopefully that seems to be okay, but it is a case that like we are going to draft players and then 15 minutes later they're going to be out for the season certain times. It's going to happen. There's no, it's just that time of the year. So we'll take those opportunities when they arrive. It feels like we also started off running backs just so we could avoid drafting Devin Singletary again this week in the draft. But the next round is the range that he may go in. But I think for my safety and my sanity, I think maybe if we get him to be drafted before it gets back to us, we don't usually root for people to draft their favorite players ahead of us, but we'll see here when we have those two running backs. But we are, I'm starting to really like this build. And you mentioned not the star-studded element, but we talked about the likes of Adam Thielen. You know, you want to be drafting these players who are ascending. You don't want to be drafting the players who are at the back end of their career who have most likely already peaked. So the likes of a Treylon Burks, the likes of Sky Moore. And I do think there's a huge opportunity in that Chiefs offense to get a lot of work straight away based on how that offensive core has moved about this particular year. So Zach, give us a run through the full team as we approach the 9th round here.
Sure thing. So we got running backs Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, wide receivers DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, Elijah Moore, Treylon Burks, Sky Moore. We actually have more correlation here. That's not something you see often, I'm sure. And then we also
have to get Rondale Moore now to see.
Yeah, if we get Rondale Moore, we knock it all out. And then we have tight end Darren Waller, still in search of our first quarterback, which is honestly where I'm leaning here right now, guys.
Me too.
I've got. I mean, at this point in time, if you're listening, you probably know I got Derek Carr at the top of the queue. That's right in his range. And then even Kirk Cousins on the bring back, I think would be maybe the way to play it. If he were to go, we could go Justin Fields. So I've got all three of them in there, but it might be quarterback these next two picks unless just something insane happens. But it's probably quarterback here.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. It makes sense.
Yeah, no, that feels exactly the way to go here. So we'll see how it plays out over the next 4 picks. TJ Hawkinson goes off the board, Tyler Lockett, Russell Gage, MVS, Chase Claypool, Chris Olave. But yeah, based on how things have started, I think this roster's turning out pretty well for us. Sometimes when you do start off with those running backs, like I mentioned, you can get caught out trying to build up your wide receivers. But these are all guys that I'm targeting in all my drafts. So I'm like, there's none of them that I felt that we really had to go out of our way to get. So 3 picks away. Let's see what we can do. I think the next 4 picks could be pivotal for this overall roster. So we do have in the queue, as you mentioned, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, and Justin Fields. So we have Waller. It feels like based on that, have you any strong preferences there? You mentioned that you are stacking up Minnesota. I'll hold my hands up. Both hands are now in the air. Not doing a lot of Kirk Cousins stacking this season, but this could be the first time.
I think Carr is the pick here first, and then if Cousins is there, but I will say too, I have Justin Fields ranked ahead of Cousins, just straight up. Like in my rankings, is more that I've stacked. Fields is obviously there's 2 guys you stack with him. So if I'm very rarely just getting like a naked Fields. So if I don't get a Mooney early and someone gets Komet or something like that, then I'm just pivoting to a guy like Cousins, where if I had Minnesota guys earlier on, then obviously there we go, Derek Carr.
This could be a chance to take Devin Singletary.
No.
I'm willing to. I think we could probably hold off on the first quarterback here at this point, unless you want to go with Fields. But if we're to be honest, this has been 100%.
We need a call.
Yeah, I would go Singletary or Boyd if we're not going quarterback here.
All right. Let's do Singletary. I don't want to, but let's do it.
Yeah, let's
get
just hope
Singletary here.
We need to get those running backs. I cannot believe this. This is the first draft that I've said that I openly didn't want to draft Devin Singletary, and nobody drafted him. So that is that can happen. I do think just based on the way this is going to play out, we'll see. I think we get one of these quarterbacks coming back to us.
Could we have gone with Aaron Rodgers there? I was kind of going to maybe make a pitch for him. Not that we have any Packers at all, but enough of his wide receivers are going so late that to get him and maybe take a stab on a guy who could potentially turn into, I don't know, the Romeo Doubs' ADP has gotten absolutely steamed over the last couple of days. He's going like 188 overall now or something like that. But just guys like that where you can still hopefully get a reliable quarterback off of the sniping of Carr. And then Aaron Rodgers, I think I probably would have actually been kind of okay with that. But I'm not sure where you guys would have been on that if we would have chosen to do so.
I think in hindsight, it's making the Mixon over Aaron Jones thing. If we had Aaron Jones, we'd probably feel a lot better just going Rodgers there and just locking that in.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's a good hindsight lesson too. I mean, I've definitely paired Dalvin Cook with Aaron Jones a good bit. Just given that week 17 correlation too. And then, like you said, there's a lot of darts to just generally throw with Green Bay right now. And it's not like Alan Lazard is some lock. So
Right.
I am a little upset that Dobbs is being pushed up draft boards the way he is, because he just seemed like an easy go-to throughout the offseason.
It's almost insane now. When I saw it last night, I couldn't believe it.
He's
going ahead of like JT.
We have got crushed here, guys. Just to let you know, we have got absolutely annihilated.
We're getting
it feels like maybe that means that Aaron Rodgers. The other thing we could do here is we could go with Rondell Moore and get all the Moores. But did he go in the last couple of picks? But I think we go Rodgers here.
I think we got to go Rodgers and then just stack them with just two. I mean, if we have to reach a little bit on like a Dobbs is fine, but like there's also there's not a lot to love with the pass catchers for Green Bay right now. It's tough to buy into like a Sammy Watkins. It's even tough to buy into Robert Tonyan with his ACL recovery and stuff.
I was just going to ask about him, but he's not. There's not been a lot of good reports on Tonyan, I don't think, has there?
No.
The pace of play is what always concerns me most with the Packers. It's just like being a Packers fan, I don't draft many Packers players, and that's usually because it's quite slow outside of Rodgers and Devontae Adams, and then obviously the running back. So we'll see how it plays out here. That was a disappointing turn, maybe in hindsight, obviously. I think the Carr pick put us in a little bit of a bind. I thought we would get one of those quarterbacks coming back to us. So we do miss out on Kirk Cousins, Justin Fields, and Rondell Moore. They go the 3 picks before us. So we'll see how we can round this out now as we finish out the 10th round. 8 rounds left to go, in this particular range. It looks like and feels like to me, unless things work out in a super unique way, that this probably leans into a 3 quarterback build at this point. JJ, are you usually going 3 quarterbacks if we're waiting this late?
I'm not usually, but in situations like this, I am. We have like Elijah Moore, for instance, where we could go Zach Wilson and plug our nose and hope that he can take a step forward. We have DJ Moore, where we could technically go Baker super late as well. I mean, we at least have wide receivers that are not just tied to elite quarterbacks that have already gone. And so I think this does lend itself to being more of a 3 QB build. And fortunately, we went with Darren Waller early, and so we don't have to worry about going 3 tight ends.
Yeah. So we'll see. Always afraid to ask you to pull up the queue here at this particular point, but
I feel like we have some people in here.
Yeah, we now have 3 running backs in Devin Singletary, and we have obviously 2 that we took at the start, and Dalvin Cook and Joe Mixon. So I feel like at max in this draft, I'm looking to, based on what we did at running back, I think we can afford that 1 extra quarterback slot and hold off at a max of 5 running backs. Is that also what you're thinking at this point, JJ?
Yep, exactly.
Yep. So I think we'll see. There's a lot of ways this can play out. The quarterback part in waiting is a little bit disappointing, but I think we can do it because, as you mentioned, the wide receivers that we have drafted, there is going to be options. Even the likes of Ryan Tannehill could potentially go in there as well with Treylon Burke. So lots of options. What are you hoping happens here, Zach, over the next 2 picks? Who are you hoping is the player that lands back to us?
Just someone who I like. No. I mean, it's kind of really interesting right now. This is a really gross area just for picks in general. I actually threw Julio Jones in there because I think there's some Tampa Bay Carolina correlation, but we never know with that. 2, I think is not a bad option there as well. Just to get a second quarterback. We don't have a lot going for us right now. So we got 10 seconds. Is there anyone who you're going to implore for us to get, JJ?
I'm cool with Julio or Cole Kmet, I would say.
Dude, let's do Julio. I feel like we haven't done a lot of Julio, and I think that kind of fits with the little bit. Let me look here real quick. I've got my little correlation thing built up here. So we do get it the Carolina week 17.
Right.
I can't complain about that.
I have a lot of Julio, but it's a lot of Julio, 4 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Round.
I feel it, and it isn't something you shouldn't stop drafting somebody at this particular point because you've got cheaper earlier, because it could still turn out to be a winning pick in that round. And you mentioned that it is a little bit flat in that area. It is the area that Tim Patrick was going on. He's obviously now injured. So it's a little bit of a jump there in terms of where I was taking him a couple of weeks ago, but that was always the plan. So we can start to slot him in there as well. And I think with the roster that we have also built here after bypassing wide receiver a little bit early in the draft. I think some of the veteran players like that can be smart plays to slot in. I know I talked earlier about trying to target upside, but we have a lot of upside built into this roster with the first and second year players. So hopefully Julio just wants to play football in 2022, and that will help. I would assume Team 12 has had an auto pick there. They have ended up with Tim Patrick, but 4 picks away. We'll see how it plays out over the next. That's really unfortunate luck, if you do auto pick at that point. But 4 picks away. Any prime targets here that you're looking to get, JJ?
I mean, I don't know who's available right now exactly.
It is.
I'm gonna go ahead. I'll pull it up.
There we go. Yeah, it's probably. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind going wide receiver here to just keep building that up a little bit. We feel generally okay with the running back position. I mean, I think we can go in any direction. Like we can go with whoever we feel like is, in the best spot overall. I'm looking at the wide receiver list. I like Jahan Dotson this year a good bit. Who's on the? And I think it was Darrell Henderson still available too. I'm kind of intrigued by Henderson as like a 0 RB type target.
He went in the last pick. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I would have some interest in Fairmouth as well if you wanted to go tight end, but I'll let JJ have the call here. You also mentioned Trevor Lawrence. He's here, but we have no stacks or correlations with that. So
yeah, we don't have any Jacksonville. Let's go Dotson.
5 seconds. Okay.
Yeah. The one thing I'm looking at right now, I'm just going to go ahead and show it because this is getting pretty late here. We've got some options at quarterback in particular. I don't know where JJ's at on Mac Jones. I kind of like Mac Jones for a year 2 leap. He's a couple rounds off still. We can even run something back with Baker Mayfield, and as gross as it is now, even Carson Wentz is almost on the table. So is Ryan Tannehill. He mentioned Wilson earlier. So I don't really feel too obligated into kind of shoehorning one of these earlier quarterbacks to the current ADP. I'd almost rather keep on padding some of these other positions with some of these other guys who we like, knowing that there's a few more quarterbacks still available to us with stacks, with later round draft capital, and what we know is now just going to be a 3-round build or a 3 quarterback build. I'm kind of partial to keep going that way.
In situations like this, I have kind of just defaulted to going like a New England stack because you can just get you can get like a Bourne and Hunter Henry and Mac Jones and just be done.
I love it. I don't know if it's going to go well or not, but
it's just an easy. Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, you're no one's expecting like no one's drafting Mac Jones as like their QB1 in like a regular season long league for good reason. I don't know if the ceiling week to week is going to be there, but clearly he's going to have some weeks where he's able to throw 3 or 4 touchdown passes. So, if that happens when we need it to happen, obviously Aaron Rodgers has a decent enough week 17 matchup. And maybe Mac Jones helps us get there. So I don't mind going that route at all. The other thing too, with the 3 quarterback build, which I go 2 quarterback more than I go 3 quarterback in these builds, but the other thing with the 3 quarterback build is it allows for a little bit more differentiation with your lineup because you're getting multiple stacks that other teams just aren't getting in that combination. Because obviously there's 3 combinations rather than 2 that you're sort of working off of. And so there's at least a little bit more of a differentiator there as well. So it's not like the end of the world. You just, whenever it's crunch time and you're in these like final 5 rounds, it's just, you got to think really strategic about the direction that you're going. You have to reach a little bit also just to make sure that you can get those stacks.
Yeah, no, I agree. So the other thing, we do have Aaron Rodgers now, and we obviously have Dalvin Cook. So if we do pair him up with a few of the Packers, that is going to leave us with another stack for week 17, with the comeback with Dalvin Cook. So let's see how it plays out. KJ Hamler, somebody I was hoping that we might have an option at here, and KJ Osborne, who both went in that last round, or since we last picked. So we do have Tyler Algier, KJ Osborne, Devontae Parker, Jacoby Myers, Naheem Hines, James Robinson, Pickens, Hamler. Interesting there that we're talking about the wide receivers for the Patriots. I don't think we mentioned either Devontae Parker or Jacoby Myers, but they go back to back. How are you feeling overall about the entire Patriots wide receiver core, I guess we'll say?
I think that from a percent rostered standpoint, I've drafted Kendrick Bourne the most just because he's been the cheapest. But I've sprinkled in other guys. I haven't gotten as much Jacoby Myers as I have some of the other guys, only because I don't really think that he has the same type of weekly ceiling that a player like even Devontae Parker, who can be a red zone threat. I'm not a big Devontae Parker fan, doesn't separate very well. But he's evidently doing decent enough in camp right now, which is good to hear. And they do need that like true sort of like X that can play on the outside. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's at least able to put up like a 7 or 8 touchdown season this year. I don't think that would be shocking. So I've just sort of gravitated towards him more than I have Jacoby Myers in these drafts.
Yeah, my favorite one is usually free in the last round is Taquan Thornton. I think is a fun pick if things work out. We just have a full rookie wide receiving room here at this present moment in time, but we are on the clock. Some of the options available would be Hunter Henry if we were thinking about going that way. I think he would be interesting. I like Kenneth Gainwell, but we're pretty solid at running back, but we could go with him and then see it out. Who do you want to get here, JJ?
Yeah, I mean, straight up, like I think that we have to just let's just go with Hunter Henry, and then we can sort of build around the Mac Jones stack.
Yeah, the idea.
I would say that
it gives you an idea to get the idea of that happening anyway.
Yeah. I will say, like, straight up in this range, the tight end that I would get is David Njoku. I've been getting him more than any other tight end, but I just think that given this build where we're at, like, we can't sort of force that. Whereas in other builds, if you felt good about your stacks already, then I would reach a little bit. I just feel like Njoku's like 4 or 5 spots too low in tight end ADP right now.
And with now having Hunter Henry and Darren Waller, are you happy to set at 2 tight ends for this build with Henry being the second tight end?
I think it's fine. Yeah. You just, obviously in any of these situations, you're just hoping that these guys stay healthy. And if they don't stay healthy, then, your lineup's kind of done, but that's just the way that it goes. You have to assume the best outcome for a lot of these guys. And if we assume that Darren Waller stays healthy and is relatively productive, I think the 2 tight end build with him and Hunter Henry is good enough.
Yeah, I usually play it out as well like that, but sometimes if the likes of Everett or Fant, is staring at you, I tend to push them into a 3 tight end approach then, but I do try and stick to where possible. So we are coming back around to our picks. Since that, Nico Collins, Paris Campbell, Kenneth Gainwell, David Njoku, who you mentioned, Matt Ryan, Jarvis Landry have gone off the board, then Curtis Samuel. So we are 1 pick away here. Was that a laugh of Curtis Samuel is like, why did the person pick Curtis Samuel?
He's gone in the 18th round of all the puppy 3s I've done so far. So
reach and get your guy. That's the
yeah, this is who we've got looking at us so far. I think Michael Carter is interesting. Did we get sniped? We just got sniped on Isaiah McKenzie. Anyone you're looking at here?
I have no strong preference with where we're at.
Neither do I. I like the Jets playoff schedule for this one. Why don't we go Michael Carter here?
I'm good with that.
Just to get that one out of the way. Isaiah McKenzie, I was really hoping would actually make it back to us. He had a 168 ADP, so I thought there might be a chance that we were able to kind of get him and jump the Jamison Crowder pick at the 160 overall. But next couple picks here, I think, is where we're going to actually have to hone in on quarterback and hopefully get our guys. The only reason I was fine with fading quarterback here, looking at the ADPs, Mac Jones should hopefully make it back to us, barring anyone in here who's just trying to completely ruin our day. And if that happens, then we can kind of slowly.
This is the Jacoby Myers drafter here, so let's see what happens.
It does look like that the Jacoby Myers and Devontae Parker teams, though, they have 2 early-ish round. I mean, this team that has Myers has Dak and Matthew Stafford, and the team that has Devontae Parker has Joe Burrow and someone else that was even drafted before that. So I mean, you guys know how these drafts go sometimes, and how people love to ruin other people's lives by ruining their stacks.
Yeah, that
they really do. The thing is, I think at this point in time, we're kind of insulated no matter what, because some of the guys who we have rostered would cover someone, I think, doing that. Like if you want to take Mac Jones, fine. Like we'll take Ryan Tannehill, I guess, or we'll take Carson Wentz, or we'll take Baker Mayfield, who we could do it. We
have so many options.
I think we have ways to get it to the end here.
With the Michael Carter pick too, I'm kind of intrigued by Zach Wilson with this build because we have Elijah Moore too.
Yeah, so that would actually even be excellent.
And we joked about Singletary earlier, but we get Singletary. Cook actually went to pick after myself and Zach have been talking a lot about Devin Singletary and James Cook. They go back to back in this draft, but to get Michael Carter, then when you're looking at running backs and their gaps in ADP. I love Breece Hall, and I've been drafting Hall a lot. But if I don't draft Hall, I am drafting Michael Carter, and getting him at this particular point of the draft, I think is as your 4th running back. I don't think we can. I think we'll probably still go for a 5th, but at this point, he is our 4th running back. I would almost be willing to set on 4 if we had to do that. How are you feeling about running backs with Carter, Singletary, Mixon, and Cook?
I think it's a strong group. The other thing too, we get, I mean, again, it's a running back correlation, but we did get a bill to go along with Cincinnati with Joe Mixon, which was good. But yeah, I mean, I think that we could get away with 4. Ideally, we would get 5 here. I think just with this build, and just throw a complete dart, maybe even in the last round. But I think it just depends on how the next couple of rounds can end up going.
Oh, if you need darts in the we've got darts for the running back position.
Oh yeah.
We also have a player called Brian Robinson who Zach is just single-handedly raising propaganda for trying to get him, get that ADP risen.
Almost a 50% rostership of Brian Robinson.
Nice.
Embarrassingly.
Yeah, he's one of my highest roster players right now.
There we go. That's all I need to hear.
It's really mostly a like I don't think Washington's rational, and
no.
I don't think Brian Robinson was like that amazing of a prospect. He was fine. I've just never seen a more fine kind of prospect overall. And so I wasn't like super high. I think we're on the clock right now.
Yeah.
Are we good with Mac Jones here then?
Yeah, let's go Mac.
We got him, and we even have a couple Packers who might be able to get on the way back here if we wanted. So
we got him.
Yeah, we did it. But continue on the Brian Robinson take though, because a lot of what you're saying is aligned with what I said. So I just want to hear JJ's thoughts through. So
I just don't think they're rational. And in a situation like this, you always want to try to get those like handcuff pluses, right? Where if Antonio Gibson goes down, which obviously he hasn't been able to stay healthy, Brian Robinson understood he's not like the most dynamic running back in the world, but he could still handle 15 plus carries a game. And not only that, but even without an injury to Antonio Gibson, we could just see them use Brian Robinson more than expected. And every report, I love Antonio Gibson. I'm obsessed with Antonio Gibson as a player, and I wish that they would just use him as a true bell cow. But so many reports, like over and over and over again, are pointing to this being a true committee. Whether it's Ron Rivera's quote about Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams, whether it's them talking about Brian Robinson getting short yardage and goal line work. I mean, there's just a lot of bad pub, and not only that, but the actions themselves, right? Like that's what we always want to look at with what teams do. They spent a day 2 pick on Brian Robinson. I don't think that was just for nothing. I think they're a little bit worried about Antonio Gibson's just general health, and they want to keep him fresh because he's such a dynamic player.
Yeah, no, I agree. We're lockstep with that.
We got nipped on Dubes, I think, did we?
Yeah, but we could go Sammy Watkins here as kind of like a cheap
I
chance.
don't know if I can go Sammy Watkins.
I don't think I can stomach it.
I'd go Kendrick Bourne. I'd go Bourne to get the Mac Jones.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's do that. That I threw him in there as kind of another option there. If we go naked Rodgers, we go naked Rodgers.
We need to come up with some sort of nickname for like when you get screwed early on in a draft and you can't really put a stack together, and then you just go to Mac Jones, Hunter Henry, and Kendrick Bourne. Like that trio needs some sort of nickname because it's like such an easy go-to whenever you screw up early.
It really is.
But those sort of things too could, like, look, we're joking about it now, but when it comes to the end of the season, some of those lesser owned stacks could be the absolute key. I mentioned at the start, how, let's say we talk about, you mentioned now that we have the Bills running back in Devin Singletary, we have the running back then on the other side and Joe Mixon. Let's just say this team does really well and made it through to week 17. Like there's going to be so many people that are going to be on the Joe Burrow and the wide receiver stack and the Josh Allen and the wide receiver stack that if it just turned out to be, like, you can really flip it on its head. It's unlikely to happen, but sometimes having those lesser owned stacks or less popular plays can be an easy way to kind of be against the field in a certain way. But we have Kendrick Bourne with Mac Jones, so we go 3 out of the last 4 picks are all Patriots players, so we have that. We did miss out on Wood, just out of interest. We take Kendrick Bourne, who I really like, and I still think based on the buzz around Dubes that I would probably still rather go Kendrick Bourne if both were available. How would you feel at that particular point, JJ, at the wide receiver position?
Yeah, I agree. I think that Bourne makes sense there.
I think I'm just like, obviously you want to react to the news as it happens, but I think with the, particularly on Twitter and social media, when some of the highlights happen, and I've joked about this a number of times, even with the teams tweeting out after the draft, some of the highlights their players were doing in training, like the highlights aren't even good highlights, and people are like, wow, like all in on this player right now. And I'm like, that's not even that impressive of a thing that they've just done. Like, you know, maybe we'll wait for something impressive. How are you reacting to the news as it happens, you know, over the course of, I guess, the last 3 or 4 days with training camp?
Yeah, you know, I kind of look at it as make sure it's not just confirming priors and you're doubling down on how you felt before. Like, you know, someone like Romeo Doubs, it's really easy. Like, I was drafting him everywhere, you know, throughout the last couple of months, and it's really easy to get like overly excited and then say, oh no, he's like a 13th rounder now, just because, you know, he's getting so much hype. But at least stay level headed from that perspective. Negative pub is always something to pay attention to, aside from the positive stuff, because that probably means that something truly is happening that's not great. But make sure that negative publicity is not sort of this like subjective, you know, beat reporter just saying something, you know, just to say something. You know, it's more so like I'm looking at like the objective stuff. Like, is this guy playing with the first team? You know, someone like Isaiah Pacheco, who I liked a lot as a prospect. You know, he's getting run with the first team, and there's a depth chart there objectively that he can hypothetically overcome. It's not like there's like these like locked in studs in that Kansas City backfield. So you bring everything together and you bring his prospect profile together and how my model liked him and all this kind of stuff. And you can start to build a narrative as to why he goes from someone who you might not have made the team to now, okay, maybe he's an 18th round dart throwing these things in case things just kind of break the right way for him. So that's kind of the way that I view these news items.
You mentioned an 18th round dart throw. I'm in one of the slow FFPC drafts that I mentioned earlier, where he went in the 12th round earlier today. So these sort of things can happen. I just love seeing it happen.
Yeah, like that's insane. Like that's like there's still a chance. And I'm a huge Pacheco guy, but there's still a chance he doesn't even make the team. Like that's still a very real possibility.
So we are back on the clock. We have some options available. Chris Evans would be a running back, but we obviously have Joe Mixon in this, so I wouldn't be really looking to handcuff them. Anyone else that stands out for you here that you would like to get?
I think we go 3 QB build and we go with Zach Wilson here.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was leaning as well.
We got Elijah Moore, we have Michael Carter, obviously a receiving threat. So if they somehow go off in that in the playoffs in general, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to only be week 17.
Yeah, Cole Beasley's in the queue as my pick as a random Packers stack. Maybe he goes to Green Bay and partners up with Aaron Rodgers. But is
that just because both of them are not vaccinated? Was that where we're going with that? Or?
It could be. It could be. I had Odell Beckham Jr. in there as well, but he got sniped. So I just kind of got two relatively known wide receivers in there as maybe a galaxy brain attempt on a Packers stack, because otherwise we're probably going to be missing out on our Packers. But I really think we just need to go running back here. So I put JJ's guy in there. I got Deante Johnson, who I really like a lot. We can get Baker Mayfield out of there. So we're coming up. We got one more pick left. Any other guys who I should be throwing in the queue here?
I don't know if you want to add them in, but we have a lot of Patriots, obviously, and the Miami running backs and Sony Michel and Raheem Mostert are usually guys that I'm trying to draft, but it just depends if you want to add them in. But they would be facing off against the Patriots in week 17. I see Mostert is already gone.
Yeah, Mostert's gone. I'll put Michelle in there.
But we'll let JJ make the last call. Jerick McKinnon, somebody who I'm drafting. But are you fading McKinnon now for Pacheco?
No. I've drafted a ton of McKinnon. I'm really, it's more so just like trying to build a portfolio of. Oh, there he just got.
That's always fun when you add him to the queue and he just.
Yeah. I'm really just throwing darts at that backfield in general, right? That includes CEH at times. I mean, I'm not like overexposed necessarily. It's just a lot easier to be really heavy on McKinnon, and I'm starting to draft Pacheco a little bit more now because of that drum beat, because of him getting some of those first team reps. And again, you know, I like him as a prospect. Like there's some numbers in there that really favor him.
Let's do it. Let's take Pacheco. That's I think that is our first official Isaiah Pacheco pick.
My first.
It could very easily turn into nothing because, like I said,
but sure.
The pro side of him making the team, though, is that he also can play special teams. And, you know, you could see a scenario where it's really interesting that Kansas City backfield, they basically, like the way that I saw the Pacheco pick is they want more explosion in that offense, in that backfield. That's why they signed Ronald Jones. Pacheco, best weight adjusted 40 time in the class, as we know. And so they just need that explosion because CEH didn't have a single 20+ yard run last year. And so the way I see it is that Jerick McKinnon is sort of like the CEH. He's more explosive just because he's more athletic, but he can play the pass catcher role a little bit. But I think Pacheco is more of that Ronald Jones type, but maybe he has more pass catching upside than we even realize, because obviously Ronald Jones doesn't have that, and he has that special teams ability evidently. And so if that's the case, then he might find himself on the roster. And if he's on the roster, he can climb that depth chart because it's not filled with unbelievable talent.
And with this roster as well, with Cook and Mixon and Singletary, for example, it is likely that we're not really looking for somebody in those first 4 or 5 weeks. So maybe if he can make the roster, that's the way it plays out. Zach, give us a full rundown here of this team we have assembled. We'll give it a judgment then as to how we think it turned out.
Yeah, give me 1 second because it's going to kick me out of here after.
Is that how bad the draft was?
No, when the draft ends, I think it automatically takes me to the screen, so I don't want to get cut off here midway through. But I do think overall that I like this team the way it's shaping up to see it kicks me out. So Puppy 3. All right, we're looking at 3-quarterback build with Aaron Rodgers, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson. Running backs, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, Devin Singletary, Michael Carter, Isaiah Pacheco. Wide receivers, DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, Elijah Moore, Treylon Burks, Sky Moore, Julio Jones, Jahan Dotson, Kendrick Bourne. And then we have a 2 tight end build with Darren Waller and Hunter Henry. Again, we got that Patriots stack going on. When all else fails, you go Patriots. So that's the team. JJ, what do you think overall of the squad here?
I'll give it like a 6.5, out of 10. It's not one that I would be jumping over joy for, but I think that we were just put in some tough situations. In hindsight, we should have gone Aaron Jones over Joe Mixon, the way that Aaron Rodgers fell in that draft. The fact that Rodgers went after Justin Fields and Kirk Cousins, that ruined, and even Derek Carr, that ruined us really. Like that range was really what hurt our stackability.
That was 12 picks. It was only 12 picks, but that really put us in a bind.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. And that's going to happen in these drafts because people are not necessarily rational about the way that they're stacking their own teams, right? So it happens. So I think that if we had a piece with Rodgers, if we had Aaron Jones instead of Joe Mixon, I'd feel, I maybe would give this a 7.5 instead of a 6.5, But I think it's at least different. Like we got the 3 QB build, and those secondary quarterbacks have decent stacks with them. So if things go, the right way for them in those offenses, they could still thrive and be fine. And the individual players that we drafted, I liked. And so that's always good. Like if you can get those individual values, even if you're not stacking hard, you can still be all right.
Yeah, the correlations aren't as strong maybe as you would like, but we were able to achieve some of those backdoor stacks, which really did help the roster. In terms of the Aaron Rodgers element, there was a message in the chat to say that Randall Cobb was an option.
He got taken too.
Did he?
Yeah,
so he
got taken. Yeah, I saw that comment and I was like, well, if worse comes to worse, maybe Randall Cobb, and he was taken too. So
and that would you seen our reaction with the Sammy Watkins option. It would be even more so that with the Randall Cobb option. But yeah, I think overall it played out pretty well. I think you mentioned there the key points, JJ, with some of those swaps that we could have done to help it build out. But I think overall, from a structural perspective, I think we achieved kind of a lot of the things that we were talking about throughout the draft. But yeah, I think it was fun the way. That's the key. Have a fun draft and draft some players that you like. So I think we're not in a bad spot. JJ, as we get ready to close things up here, we did mention the draft guide at the start, but let the people listening and know where they can find it.
Yeah, so you can go to lateround.com and find everything I'm offering. I have a Patreon. We have a great Discord. The draft guide, which is $24.99. And you get weekly updates every Friday with updated rankings and stuff like that. And then the Late Round podcast, which you can find anywhere podcasts can be found.
That's nice and simple. Anywhere podcasts can be found. I might add that line into my outros as well. Zach, obviously they can follow you on Twitter at ZK_FFB. I'm heading over to the US next week, so I'll be meeting up with you there. We haven't decided if there will be a stream next Tuesday for people listening. Obviously this one is on Wednesday. We normally do them on Tuesdays, but anything coming out this week that you want to let the listeners know about?
I just recently dropped a Better and Best Ball running backs article over at NBC Sports Edge. You can check that out. I have another running backs article actually that I'm planning on working on. Hopefully get started on that today, have that ready for tomorrow, maybe be published on Friday. So another article on NBC Sports Edge, likely in the hopper for the end of this week. And then outside of that, Colm, I still have to get my house ready for you, man. I got to get it cleaned up and in order for our highly respected guests. So getting that set up.
Zach mentioned to me a couple of days ago he was out looking at some houses, and I was thinking like, don't buy a new house just because I'm coming over to visit. So,
we were considering going all out and going $400,000 in debt for a nice place for you to stay.
It's a common weekend in the United States, Colm. I mean, this is what we do.
Yeah, it would make a lot of sense. So I've just got a lot of podcasts coming out, so check those out. You can follow me on Twitter at Overtime Ireland. But a lot of fun having JJ on the show. Really enjoyed talking through the draft, some of the conversation that we had there, and obviously, hopefully this team gives us a little bit of a run. But we did get a little bit of snipage that put us in a little bit of pressure. But thanks for everyone for tuning in. Hopefully you've enjoyed the show. And until we're back with another podcast, have a good one.